Hello, I'm Adam J. Morgan, and welcome to Late Night Ghost Stories. This week we have Karin with us, and she's going to share some of her experiences and why she likes to ghost hunt. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Karin. Lovely for you to dial in tonight as well.
And thank you. It's an honour to be invited. So, I've been investigating the paranormal for about 17 years. And through that time, you start off as the classic scaredy cats. And now I am what you would call a skeptic. So, not a disbeliever, but I can see an apparition walk past me, and my expression will be, oh, that's interesting. So it shows how you change and grow over the years. And when I started it, I never realized it would take over my life. So now I've been involved with the Jamaica Inn for 9 years, running their private and paranormal public events, researching history, doing talks about it, and also now for the last few years, especially heritage and charity venues, advising them, protecting them, and making sure that they are not given the wrong information, teams respect them and that sort of thing. And as you say, it's a great passion and a great honour.
Well, I love how you're now trying to sort of rationalize things that you're seeing, but you're saying when you started, you were very sort of, did you believe everything you were seeing like many years
Well,
ago?
my paranormal experiences started 30 years ago. In my late 20s, I became first a manager and then a single woman tenant of a pub that was one of the original medieval streets of Bristol. So the pub was Georgian, my cellar was medieval, and literally 20 feet across the road underneath a modern building was the city wall of Bristol. What
Wow.
I didn't realise when I moved in, that the place was quite haunted. So for the first 6 months, when I locked the front door and crept up 3 flights of stairs to my bedroom, that there was something sharing the building with me. And I remember one night, it was a Wednesday, I'd locked up, and it was about midnight, and there was an old film, a classic now, called The Fog. And when the pirates or the people knock on the door, I had knocks, first on my bedroom door and then something kicking my bedroom door. Now I'm all alone in this old building. The streets are deserted outside, mostly office buildings. And I thought to myself, now, if I open that door, I'm going to die like the movies. So I just put the quilt over my head and waited till the morning. So roll on 6 months later, I then became used to, which we presume was a woman. And the interesting thing was, if anyone stayed, if they were male, and the man who's my husband now, and he stayed, they didn't like men. So the locals will say about a woman in black walking into the gents' toilet. I would look, no one there. I would have my keys thrown against the wall. And interestingly, when you live with something and weirdly you get used to it, you don't get scared come the end, which was probably a really good background for when I did actually start 10 years later into the paranormal.
I noticed you said it didn't like men. What reason do you have for that? Was it more experiences happening, more interactive with people when men were present?
Well, if I wanted a night off, there was a lovely chap called Jay. He worked for the tax office. He would lock up the pub for me. And every time he did that, something would happen. So one night he was taking the till up to the flat. He put the till drawer down. He put the key in the flat door. And as he turned down to pick the till up, all the coins were around the till and not inside the drawer. Absolutely scared and rigid. Another time he was sat in the bar, the lights were off waiting for his taxi, there's a heavy swing bar door which the wind cannot open. It just suddenly opened up completely on its own, and he just ran out and waited outside. So it seemed to pick on people. My late father, he came in and he decided he wanted to be a cellarman, and it would trip him up in the cellar. You'd walk. It's done it to me a couple of times, but again, it was so weird. My husband swears one Wednesday night he heard the flat door go. He was in the bath, and he said, you walked up the stairs. He said, I was chatting to you. Hannah, our barmaid who lived on the top floor, came down and said, who are you chatting to? He said, Karen. She said, there's no one here. So he jumped out the bath, got dressed, ran down. He said, you've just been upstairs, haven't you? I said, no, I haven't left the bar all evening. I'm here. He said, you're a liar. You've been upstairs. And to this day, he does not believe me. So who was he talking to? He swears it was my voice, but he can't remember what my replies were. Now, as an investigator, I find that so interesting. So they say about doppelgangers, and there's always someone else. So do I have a ghost double? Who knows?
But now you're saying, with all that in mind, 30 odd years ago, that you try and rationalize things now, and you're not so much a believer, you're more of a skeptic, open-minded skeptic, but you are a skeptic. What changed over the course of the years?
I think that, again, when you start investigating, I was very, very lucky, because you're very naive. You don't know how the brain works, how our eyes deceive us, etc. And I got talking to some really clever and intelligent people, and one was a wonderful chap called Kev Kerr. And he, bless him, he took me under his wing, and he said, right, let me just teach you about the brain, about skepticism. And I think it gave me a really good background to say, yeah, I've had this personal experience, but I can't prove it. So it's fabulous. I've seen a ghost. I've seen 9 in total. I've been so lucky. But I cannot prove that that is a ghost or that is a person that once was living. I can only call it a personal experience. But, I've been lucky to have quite a few over the years. Some
and
absolutely hilarious.
That's a perfect prompt for me to say to you, tell us your ghost story. What is the most creepiest, spookiest experience you've ever had during the course of all this?
So before I go on to that, I want to tell you the hilarious one. And when that happened to me, and that must have been about 10 years ago, it made me think that, why do we view ghosts as scary? Why can't ghosts have a sense of humour? And this happened to me at a fantastic location in Wolverhampton called Tetton Hall Towers. And there was a group of us, and it's quite a big place. It's a college. The main building used to be a private home, supposedly built on the remains of an old tavern. So a lot of interesting history. And it was about 3:15 in the morning, and I packed up my cases, and I'm walking along a corridor completely on my own. And in my right ear, and I'll never forget it, not only did I hear a man's voice, I could feel the breath. And it wasn't the rude word, what he said, it was the way he said it. He called me something beginning with W, and he said it in such a piss-take way that I burst out laughing. Wow. And my first thought was, someone's thrown their voice, looked around, no one there. I put the case down, and my exact words were, in proper Bristolian fashion, well, that's bloody charming, isn't it? And that changed everything.
And there was no one around. There was no possibility, no possibility that someone could have been near or hiding in the dark, or...
It was actually in my ear. You could feel the whisper.
Now that,
and it's
so really
vivid.
Creepy. But you, rather than being freaked out, your reaction was to laugh and like, what was that? What was going on? Wow.
Yeah, because there was another, I've just remembered another funny one. Again, why can't there be the humour? I was visiting a friend who has a second home in the Cotswolds, and he bought back the other two cottages in Charlbury, and one was built about 1840. And we'd gone out to have some lunch, and we'd gone back to have a cup of tea. And I said, just use your bathroom. Went upstairs, and I was doing things as you do, and I felt fingers running through my hair. And you could feel it. You can feel your hair move, and I just think, I'm going to the toilet. Do you mind? So it was funny, but it was slightly creepy. So I came downstairs, said to my friend, I've just had this experience. He said, don't be so silly. So I said my goodbyes. I'm driving home. After about half an hour, he rang me. He said, I've just had the same thing. Literally.
Wow.
And it never happened after. It was just that one time.
Is there a possibility, and I don't want to spoil that because that's a really good story, that you put that in his head? So you've mentioned that it happened to you and it's played on his mind, and he's experienced being rationalizing things now. Would that be a possibility?
No, because he's a man of science. He's a very, very super intelligent man,
right?
Very posh, and a very dear friend, and he will be the first one to dismiss any paranormal claim. Now, we all know that you can have muscle spasms, it feels like your hair has been played with, but this was more than that. You could feel fingers on top of your head.
Was there any history on the house? Had he heard it was haunted, or has anyone ever mentioned since that there was something?
Well, we did investigate it. A few of us stayed one night, and we had a couple of he had voices, but over the years it's completely stopped. It has a connection to Quakerism. It's a Quakerism, or it might be, no, it has a connection to John Wesley's movement. So it's interesting. It's built next to a chapel, Methodist chapel, but now the last few years nothing at all happens, which is quite interesting.
And you were going to tell us a really creepy, spooky one after that humorous.
Oh yes. So the creepiest one for me, and it happened twice down. I mean, there's lots of stories, because obviously I've been to the Jamaica Inn a lot. I've stayed a lot over the years. But I remember the first time I stayed in room 5, one of the famous haunted ones. I was staying with a friend of mine. And this was way before I had any connection to it. So it must have been about 16 years ago. And it was a Saturday night, and we got into bed, and it's a 4-poster bed. And suddenly you could hear footsteps. Now, the bedrooms have thick carpet, but this was footsteps on wooden floors. And you could hear it go from my corner right round to my friend Trace's, back again, and
in the bedroom with you.
Yes.
Wow.
Now, what I didn't know was that's been reported many times since and before, because we collect all these stories because it's fabulous data.
How did it make you feel, you and your friend, when that happened?
Well, that particular case, I was so tired. My friend was completely creeped out, which was hilarious. And she kept elbowing me, and she said, don't you go to sleep. It's right my side. We couldn't see anything, just the footsteps.
And did it keep happening, or is it just once?
Just for about 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Going backwards and...
Oh, yes.
Wow.
But it was light footsteps. To us, it seemed more like a woman, rather than heavy as a man's or light as a child. And if I was on my own, which the next experience I was, and I was scared, then yeah, I might have reacted differently. But there's a part of the Jamaica Inn that's a bit more modern. And we just finished a public night, and that must have been about 8 years ago. and I was staying in the manager's flat. Now, the manager's flat is a modern side extension, you know. Interestingly, the door wouldn't lock that night, so it must have been about 3:30. I'm in this double bed, the door, I can see it in the darkness, and I'm chatting to one of the other team members who was driving home to Exeter, because we thought we'll stay on the phone and talk so she doesn't fall asleep driving. And I heard footsteps come up the stairs, which are outside, again on wooden floor, though it's heavily carpeted, a modern staircase. And I'm chatting and I'm listening, and I thought it was a person. And I thought, they've stopped outside the door. I thought, oh my God, I guess is going to come in and going to have a fright and see me, you know, looking windswept and interesting in his bed. I was more worried for them than me. And then the footsteps were walking around my bed from one side to the other, and I said to my friend, I went, you're on your own, there's something in here. And I put the phone down, and as any good investigator will always know, the best way to handle a situation like this is to throw the quilt over your head and hide. And that's what I did.
And the noises stopped.
Stopped a couple of minutes, but it was so creepy. And again, why in a modern extension part and not the old parts?
You say that, but it's what it's built on. So we you know, that people forget that sometimes. You can have like a modern housing estate, and it depends on what was there before. Are you on a burial ground or a plague pit or ley lines or anything? You know what I mean? You never really know.
But interestingly, I know every inch about the Jamaica Inn. I know it was moorland before it was built. I know where the previous buildings were. And interestingly, they've built a modern extension about 6 years ago, and now paranormal reports have crept in there. So how can ghosts who weren't alive see a building in modern times, sit on a modern chair with their elbow on a table, looking at a paranormal investigator in 2018, and giving the investigator a look of complete amusement, as if they're studying us, not the other way around?
So what made the investigator realize it was a ghost? Was it how they were dressed? Did they fade away?
Nope, it was in the bar. I was looking the wrong way. It must have been about 3 a.m, and she happened to look, must have been about 5 seconds, and the description is the description that's been reported, room 5, around the inn as well, of a man with black curly hair, sometimes with a beard, sometimes without, sometimes with a tricorn hat. He was sat in the chair, staring at her, a smile, half amusement and half, what are you doing? Breeches, white frilly shirt, and tall black boots, solid as anything. And she happened to look right, and he was actually looking at her. She clocked eyes with him. She said she'll never forget it. And then he was gone. And what she didn't know was she wrote it all down where she remembered it. It's very important to write it down fresh. And that description, I've had so many reports, so you know it's real.
That has got to be one of the creepiest things I've ever heard. The fact he locked eyes is and then just vanished. Oh gosh, wow.
Exactly, and I think that one of the, again, a slightly funny one, I was sat in the museum with another investigator late at night, and there's a cabinet that is on a stand. So you've got a gap about 2.5 feet underneath it, and we both of us looked down, and we saw a pair of little legs walk under the cabinet and disappear, but they were in shadow form, child legs. And I'm staring, and the other person's staring, and like, are you looking what I'm looking? He said, legs. I went, yeah, but they're all black. Complete shadow legs. Just gone.
Another, again, creepy. Just
It
weird,
is.
and all at the Jamaica Inn as well.
But that's the weird thing. You can go there one night and nothing will happen.
Is it all down to the atmosphere or people
We've
perception?
noticed when it rains, but also we've noticed that it depends on the people. The weird thing is, I think as in life is in death, they don't like you. They're going to do nothing. And we had a German film crew last week filming. Nothing happened. Not one little thing.
And they walked away very disappointed, thinking,
no, they thought it was more authentic because nothing happened.
Right, okay, that's a good way.
They
a
like
very
the
good
honesty.
way of looking at it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm sat in a 1958 end of terrace council house, and my house isn't haunted, but I've had an experience. Would you like to know that?
Absolutely, we all want to hear it.
So, us investigators, we spend a fortune hiring all these wonderful old buildings, and it must have been about a group of us. We do something called Project Genesis, where we go away to an old building, whether it's haunted or not, and we stay there for the whole weekend and we investigate, hire it. It's not cheap, hence why we only do it once a year. Because we want to know whether we bring the ghosts, we make up the ghosts, or whether the ghosts are there and suddenly they decided they want to be noticed. Who knows? So we went to a old priory whole weekend. Fabulous, beautiful place. Nothing happened. So I'm home on the Sunday night, and my front bedroom is a really big bedroom, and I'm sat as I am now at my desk, and it wasn't what I saw. What fascinated me most was your gut reaction that you feel you're being watched, which I think a lot of us forget about. So I'm on my computer and I thought, God, who's watching me? And as I turn around, the other end of the room is the doorway. And I just had a lamp on, so the rest of the room was sort of, you could see, but, not brilliantly. And in the doorway was a solid black shape. I couldn't tell you features. It was humanoid, but not a great outline. And I'm just fascinated, staring at it for about 10 seconds.
Did you try and interact? Did you say anything?
No, I just stared. I just
how are you
wanted
feeling?
to know.
A shadow shape in your doorway of your own home. So how are you feeling when that was happening?
Curious.
Just not freaked out and like, whoa.
No.
I think I'd run a mile.
So I'm looking, I'm thinking, okay. And I'm waiting to see what will happen next. And then the top part, 'cause you have to be very careful because we do naturally embellish things as years go on. And I'm always very, very clear. So the top part seemed to turn and then it sort of just moved out of the room. And I was fascinated because the only way I can describe it, it was blacker than black. You couldn't see arms or legs, it was just a shape. But the top part, you could say might be a little bit head shaped.
Do you think you brought something home with you from your ghost hunt?
I don't believe in that, you see.
You don't?
I believe that if ghosts are real, they got a free will to go anywhere. I mean, they can come home, it didn't bother me. If they saw me get undressed, they'd probably run out screaming anyway. That's just my husband.
So you went to the priory, nothing happened at all.
Yeah.
But then when you were home the same weekend, you saw that. Wow, that is really, really. Oh.
And I just think, it was a very expensive hire in this place. I think there was about 5 of us. So, we really had the place to ourselves.
Well, you got your money's worth as a takeaway.
Exactly. And, I think that, whether you're a member of the public, a seasoned or a beginner investigator, it's a fascinating subject, fascinating hobby.
Well, I was going to say to you, it's not a normal hobby, is it? Or a passion?
No.
So why do you do it? What are you looking for? Is it for fun, or are you after some serious answers on age-old
So,
question: what is life all about?
so in the beginning, it was fun, trying to be a bit scared, and I think you start off as an idiot, to be honest, because there was nothing to guide you in the beginning. Now there's so much information on social media. You didn't have the knowledge then. You didn't know there were societies you could join. And there were people who've been in it a long time. Same as with me. When people come to me, I always say to them, it's not for me to tell you what to believe, but to look at the spiritual side, to look at the science and find the niche that you fit. Because you have to do and travel your own journey through the paranormal, But honesty, integrity, and just trying to be rational, three most important things.
And that's amazing, because I think that's what that's how I've always looked at it. I mean, I'm very jumpy. I would say I've never seen. I tell people, and it's the honest truth, I've never seen a ghost or a spirit, but I've had experiences. I've had interactions, touching and stroking on the face and hearing voices in my ear. I've had all that, but I've never seen what people would call a spirit or a ghost. Now, maybe I'm building up and one day I will see something, or maybe there really isn't anything. Maybe it is the stone tape theory of a playback, where the natural elements of that we don't understand, the magnetics in the earth core, has pulled the image in, and you're just getting a replay of something that's come before. I don't know the answers to that.
The interesting thing for me is my hearing isn't brilliant, but over the years, and it happens when there's a group of you, you might have some EVPs going, etc. I don't do that now because I don't have the time to review anything. But years ago I did, and what did you say? You just said something. No, I didn't. And you play back the audio recorder, and it's there. And what I couldn't understand, why did I hear it and no one else? And then it'll happen where the other person will hear it and you don't. So are we like radio stations, and sometimes we tune in to a frequency? And is that a ghost frequency?
That would make sense.
You don't know.
I think there's a lot of stuff we as we evolve as humans, we like to believe that we have accomplished and we know everything, but I think science is still a long way off of having answers. There's so many things that we don't know the answers to,
exactly. And I think as well, when you suffer your first big loss, mine 12 years ago was my father. I was a complete daddy's girl, and I became obsessed trying to contact him. And then after about a year, I thought, this is ridiculous. If it's true, he'll know that for me to believe, he would have to stand in front of me. I can see him, touch him, and have a conversation, not through a gadget or a voice recorder. But I do remember one night I was sat at my desk, I think it was about the first year and a half, and I was watching YouTube videos of the things we used to do when I was a child, Dad's Army, 8.5 Hot Mum, because my dad was a brilliant mimic. And he could do all the voices, 40 Towers, all that sort of thing. And I'm breaking my heart. And I felt a complete hand, just rest on my head. So my heart is saying, oh, that's my dad. And my head is saying, that's grief. You're hallucinating. And it lasted for about 10 seconds. And those 10 seconds, I didn't breathe because I didn't want it to end.
That's a really beautiful story, and I suppose it was comforting as well. Even though after you've tried to sort of rationalise it and say, well, could it have been? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was grief. But at the time, it's what I think your body or your mind needed.
And also interesting, I have friends that are mediums, and they say, oh, he's always coming with you on the paranormal nights. And I said, well, if that's the case, we go to these haunted places. Perhaps it's not haunted. Perhaps it's our family members, especially if you've got, weird ones like I have in my family. That are the pranksters, and they're the ones that are doing all the silly things. And you can walk away, oh my God, that venue's so haunted. and it's not.
Yeah, it's true. I think we're running out of time, but I do want to ask you, what have you got lined up? What's happening next?
So, I'm also a paranormal consultant for Visit Somerset. So, Somerset, the county, there are so many haunted places, and hopefully advising those to open up into the paranormal, especially museums, that sort of thing, because it's a great way to earn money, but also to keep the integrity and protect the brand. Um, and those that are established, like Shepton Mallet, Wookey Hall, I'm always there to give an ear and have a chat and say, have you thought of doing this, etc. Or they say I'm being bossy most likely because they know me so well. But it's so exciting, and also bringing new places out and for paranormal investigators. The Talbot in Andor, fantastic haunted hotel, connection with Mary Queen of Scots. I've investigated 3 times. We're going back in January for a sleepover, and to me, it's history first, ghost second. If nothing happens, I don't really mind. I just love the history surrounding it.
Is there anything in our lovely hometown of Bristol that you've investigated that you want to share with us?
I can say of 3 places that I'm not allowed to say because we had an agreement of well-known places, but also some fabulous ones that perhaps people don't think of. The old Bridewell Police Cell, which
Oh, I've
obviously
done
now
that.
is
Yeah,
gone.
I've done that
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
I know Ian very well. The tunnels under Templemead Station. Wow.
I've
They
I've been at
stopped access in 2011,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I mean, I have been in there whilst we were filming Paul Dubridge's local movie called Horizon. So we done a brief scene down in the tunnels, and
Did you go into the Templars Tunnel?
oh, I
The
wouldn't
Knights
know. I
Templar
wouldn't
one?
know. I know that we filmed down there. I wouldn't be able to tell you what section or what part of it, but what did you experience?
Um, we're in one of the tunnels, and I don't know what it is. It's the only time I've run from an area. And my friend Tracy, as we ran out of the tunnel into the main section, she stopped dead because she thought she'd bumped into someone. She said, "Oh, sorry," and there was no one there.
That's enough to put the
But I
frighteners
can
up you.
honestly say that place is fantastic. It's the history. Supposedly, families lived there secretly in the 1800s.
How
Supposedly.
old are the tunnels?
There's supposed to be a Knights Templar tunnel that was hand cut.
And
That's
they were all in,
fabulous.
yeah, they were all in the area, so that would make total sense. Hence the name
It is. And
Temple
the
Key.
old, yeah, the old Guild Hall that had the fire in 2011. They had a fireplace there from Colston's Tudor house. So I don't know if that survived, but there are tunnels under there that link all the banks in Corn Street.
And have you been in all these tunnels?
I couldn't get my ass down, but the others did and walked down. And there was an old car. Obviously, they used to push money about from bank to bank. Oh my God, there's so many.
What's
Um,
supposed to be haunting the tunnels? I'm curious now, as you can
I
probably tell.
well, you mean Temple Meats?
Yeah.
So there was a chap who worked there that had access. And there was an event company for a while that used to do events there as well. But there's one part with shelving, and I can remember, I mean, this is going way, way back. I can remember the feeling of dread. Now, that's a weird thing. It's your body doing the fight or flight response, and you just didn't want to be in there. There was just something about it. And I was told that one area was the Bristol's only first class air raid shelter. Now, again, I'm talking second hand information because I always like to make sure I'm saying the right things. The other one, which sadly is gone, is Whitchurch Sports Centre, which was the original hangars of Whitchurch Airport, the only municipal airport during the Second World War. There were secret meetings between Churchill and Eisenhower in the Grand Hotel, and they would land at Whitchurch Airport. It was haunted. There was an airman, and a German pilot was seen in the Cineworld in Hengrove, and I've investigated that as well.
That's really creepy.
There's
Some really good locations.
Arnold's Manors Hotel.
Yeah, I've done
room
that one.
170.
Yeah, I have done that one, yeah.
Have you seen the bricked up door? I have.
I didn't see the bricked up door. We heard about the rumour that a nun was bricked up in the wall because she was pregnant,
right,
and they wanted to obviously hide the scandal.
But there's a cupboard, and you go in. I don't think you're allowed to do it now, but you used to go in, and you can see there's a 4-foot gap, and then you can see the door. Now, the other side is one of the disabled rooms. That would be an interesting room to stay in.
Definitely. That really would.
What else is there? So, my friend owns the church, St. Michael on the Mount. Investigated that one. I also helped him when he was renovating. They had to call in the archaeologists because they were lowering the crypt. So we were helping the archaeologists because we had to move some of the bodies from the crypts. So that was really interesting because I'm a time team addict. So picking up the skulls, and if it was a dry crypt, the remains were very good. One still had the shroud pinned to his head and the hair on his head. If it was damp, then the bones turned to mush.
Oh,
that was
horrible.
very interesting.
And horrible at the same time.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
You're there picking up a mandible, right? Where's the other bone? Because it all had to be, photographed, all done properly, very respectful, because they were reburied in another part of the crypt. So it was all done complete with full respect.
Yeah.
And Norman, who owns it, because the church had no roof, it had a fire, he just put it back to an event place now, and it's fabulous, absolutely fabulous. But we filmed
history,
in the crypt one night. That was good.
You're doing that. You're making history. You're part of history. You're witnessing history. So I can see why you're sort of thing. But for me, like touching skulls and bones and all that, just the thought of it makes me feel a bit ill.
Well, I used to have 3, but I've got 2 skulls and a human foot under my desk. I don't believe they're haunted.
Nice.
But they're great study pieces. Especially the psychology, when you put one out in front of someone and say you're going to be blindfolded and I want you to have a conversation. It's surprising how people react to human remains. Because they're just bones. That's it.
You are right in saying they are just bones, but I suppose they once weren't just bones, if that kind of makes sense.
Why are we scared? Our ancestors weren't scared. They used to worship the bones. Interesting, isn't it?
It's amazing. I think we've gone way past our time, which is fine. I don't want to cut anything out because we've had so many sort of really good stories tonight, and I find you fascinating. I love the way you rationalise everything as well. I think you need to come back on the show. I think that's the only way.
That would be very kind of you.
The only way we're going to, because I can tell you've got a lot more stories to share with us, haven't you? Something... I don't know what it is, but there's something.
As well. Why have I got a ghost cat?
we need to hear more from you. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And I hope that people are going to comment below if you've been to any of these locations. If you know any locations in Bristol, or you want to share your story and come on the show, we would love to hear from you. But thank you very much, everyone. And do not have any nightmares tonight.